So Carolyn's son forced me to do something that I really didn't want to do. As you know, we have a IBC tank here. It's a 275 or 225 gallon, I forget. I've been saying 225, but I think I've been saying 275 too. I'll have to check one of these days. Anyway, it's an IBC tank in here. And we fill it with water. And with this tank, we have an RV pump attached to it that we run off a little lawnmower battery that's always on a little trickle charger. So the RV pump is pressure sensitive. So when you open up your faucet, the RV pump recognizes that pressure drop and kicks on. It has a pressure switch on it. The battery runs it and then it recharges the battery. Now I could have ran the RV pump all the way down to the batteries at my battery bank in the little truck camper. That's where my batteries are stored. But the wiring to that would have been really big because the pump is 6 amps. And running that many amps, 100, 150 feet, you would have had to have a huge thick wire. And so the cost would have been prohibitive, whereas you can get yourself a little lawnmower battery for 20 bucks or whatever they cost, put it to a little trickle charger that costs 20 bucks, and it'll last forever that way. So from the RV pump, it runs through a RV hose, a little white hose, into our on-demand water heater, which is a little camping water heater. Just type in camping water heater on Amazon, you'll find them. Get the one with the most BTUs. And the reason that's important is in the wintertime, the water's much colder than it is in the summertime. If you don't get a good BTU water heater, in the wintertime when the water in the tank is really cold, you won't get it hot enough to actually take a hot shower. When I first got a water heater, my dad bought it, my first one. Carolyn's son is still using it down there in the camper. That was one of the first things people in the comment section said, is that when the water's too cold, you won't be able to heat it up. Well, this one, I guess, was really good. I don't know what he bought me. So we've made a replacement, and it is a smaller BTU. It's obvious because in the wintertime, it doesn't heat as well as the one Dad got. So then we did a little V connection or Y connection from the RV pump, and we hooked up Carolyn's son to it with this hose. So we got one hose going that way and another hose going the other way. And then daily, I fill the water tank. Now I used to only fill it when it got about 25 gallons low, 50 gallons low, but I fill it every day now. I used to fill it with the generator here. This is an on-demand dual fuel Champion generator. I've said that many times and people are going to say, you're repeating yourself. Well, you got to repeat yourself because there's always new people here. I really like this generator, and until recently it was a real pain to start when you're running it off propane. When you're running on gas, it did fine. What was happening, I discovered, was propane was getting trapped in the cylinder, and when the cylinder would cool, it would get vapor lock and you couldn't pull the rope. And I ended up having to replace 2 ropes because I broke them. Well, when I realized it was getting vapor lock, what I decided to do is, as soon as I shut it off, I disconnect the propane hose, shut off the machine, make sure it's in off position. I pull the rope 5 times, and sure enough, it tries to start because there's still propane in the cylinder. That removes that vapor inside there, so when it cools, it doesn't make it so hard to pull. As a matter of fact, it pulls correctly. And this is 2,500 watts. It doesn't get the same amount of wattage on propane as it does gasoline. It drops a little bit. I forget what it is. So we used to run the well off of this. Now, I used to have this old 2,000 watt one, and it could pull the well pump also. Now, the well pump is a 110 volt, 3/4 horsepower well pump. It's a deep well pump. It goes down about 100 feet. And it uses about 800 watts per hour. So it's pretty massive. And so it was always easier just to run the well pump off the generator, even though it cost us money, than it was the solar panels. I got 1,000 watts of solar panels, but on cloudy days and different things, it was just tough to do. When I fill the tank, I turn the nozzle down, the valve here, down almost till it's off. So there's the off position right there, and I turn it down right here. And the reason is this is a very old well, and back in the olden days, they didn't have these really high-powered well pumps, the submersible deep well pumps. They had above-ground pumps that would basically suck it out of the ground, and they were like 5 gallons a minute pumps. They didn't pump very fast. So when they dug the well, they didn't dig them very deep. They didn't have to. because these old pumps, they could only go down 100 feet anyways. And the recovery rate, let's say the recovery rate of the well is 5 gallons a minute. So your pump can't pump any faster than the recovery rate of the well. It made sense back then. But now they have these new pumps. This one pumps 15 gallons a minute, and the one I had before it pumped 35 gallons a minute. That one was just too big. So when we fixed the well, we put a new sleeve in it, we reduced the size of the well pump, and we have that old one as a backup. If I were to pump this at the full capacity of the pump, 15 gallons a minute, it only takes about 15 minutes before the well is empty. And so you got to shut the well pump off and let it fill back up. And it only takes 15-20 minutes for the well to fill back up. So that's why I run it low. Now, you got to be careful when you're doing this, because you don't want to get what's called a deadhead. What happens is the pump will get hot if it's not pumping water. So if you shut this off by accident, you're not pumping water anymore, then that water is so hot it turns to steam, and it will try to pump that steam into the pipe, and you'll hear this boom, boom, boom. You have introduced an air into your water, that steam. Well, you will burn up the pump. You can't do it that way. So you gotta be careful you don't do that. With that 35 gallon a minute one, and when I turned it down like this, I would get deadhead all the time. But I don't with this one. And the reason is about 75 feet down, I've drilled a hole in the pipe, this black pipe right here. That way in the wintertime, that water will drain back down, well, anytime, but specifically in the wintertime, it drains back down. That way the hose or the pipe is always empty and won't freeze. That hole is big enough that it allows enough water to go through that even if this is shut off, my 15 gallon a minute pump won't deadhead. So it never gets steam in it. It's a pretty good lesson learned. The advantages of downsizing that pump. And I don't need 35 gallons a minute anyways. But now, since Carolyn's son has been here, I've been trying to figure out that since Carolyn's son has been here, we've needed more electricity. Just when he got here, that 2,000 watt inverter generator went out on us. I was going to give that to him. That was going to be the solution to his problems, our problems, so we would have enough electric to run his utilities. He wanted to run an air conditioner. I had to make a decision when it went out. Do we want to get another one of those, or do we want to get a cheaper one? This one here, it's 1,500 watts. I thought I was able to repair that 2,000 watt one. I replaced the carburetor and it ran fine for a little while. But then a few days later, it goofed up again after I'd already bought this one. It was a mistake. Unknowingly, I made a mistake by buying this one. That being said, I really like this one. It just sips the gas. But it's not big enough to run the air conditioner or the refrigerator or the well pump. It can only run the battery chargers, which is really nice. That it runs battery chargers. It can run actually 2 battery chargers. It runs 25 amps. I have 2 battery chargers, and the other one I can run at 10 amps. So it gives me a total of 35 amps. We went ahead and bought a bigger inverter. An inverter changes DC electric into AC electric, so we can send it to the house. So the idea then was we'll run this generator with both battery chargers, and then we can run all the appliances that we want. The air conditioning, the well pump. Well, the well pump I was running off the propane. I don't want to run the propane generator unless I have to, specifically for the well, because it's really nice to have. If something were to happen and I needed a generator, I would have some options with that one. If I could find gasoline laying around in somebody's car, of course gasoline is going to go bad after a while. Or if I could find an abandoned house that has a propane tank laying around on an old gas grill, I could grab that. And so it might get me through, what they call SHTF, a little bit longer. So I didn't want to use it a lot and burn it up like I did that 2,000 watt one, but it lasted like 8,000 hours. It lasted 4 or 5 years. Now that we have this dilemma that we don't have enough generator to run all the things that Carolyn's son needed and what we needed, we run the freezer, I had to figure out what to do with the solar panels. Well, Carolyn wanted to get the solar panels moved up here. She's been working on this shed, and we're going to get some paint. We're going to paint the floor and the roof, but she's got it basically finished now. And she didn't want the solar panels here anymore. She wanted them up where they are now, behind me, because she wants to get rid of this camper. And we're going to move all the batteries and all the solar equipment, the charge controller and the inverters out of there and put it in the new shed. So I moved them up here. And when I did, I made sure that I took a lot of care in making sure they were all working correctly. When they were down here, they would get tangled up in weeds and different things. The snakes would crawl up underneath them, and I just never wanted to really work on them. I'd work on them in late winter when I knew the snakes weren't around, and I'd clean up all the little terminal posts that would corrode or turn brown or black where you're on the copper wiring. When I moved them, I put it on this tarp. I'm going to get a white tarp and replace it, but I put it on this tarp, and now it's going to be really easy to work on no matter what. And I turned all the solar panels upside down, and I checked each one. I raised one up, checked the amperage on it, and lay it down, checked the next one. And I found several that weren't working correctly. And I also determined that I've lost some efficiencies from the solar panels. These should be about 100 watts each. They are 100 watts each. But when I first got them, I made a terrible mistake. And one that I want to warn you about. When these get hot, they lose efficiency. It's common knowledge. You can Google it. They will lose voltage. Anything over like 78 degrees and they start to lose voltage. And I even demonstrated that in a previous video. I had my little laser thermometer out here. I was wanting to run the air conditioner when we were still in this camper before we built the tiny house. Well, I would take cold water and I would dump it on the solar panels to get better efficiency. Well, when I did, I put little micro cracks in the solar panels right here. I know you can't see it because I tried this before. You can't see the cracks in there, but I can. And those micro cracks lose efficiency. So what I've determined is I've lost 1 amp on average per solar panel. Well, they're 5 amp panels. So now they're down to 4 amps. Doesn't sound like a lot, not 1 amp. I mean, but over 10 panels, that's 10 amps. And 10 amps is a big deal. But the thing is even though that I've lost the efficiency, when I brought them up here, I gained a lot. Down here, like I said, I didn't do maintenance on them, so I have one solar panel only producing 2 amps because it had loose wire, and this broken one, the one that was flipped over by a windstorm, got a huge crack in the surface glass, and it's down to 3 or 4 amps. I mean, it's pretty low, but it's still producing amps, so I still use it. In the morning time, I'm getting cooler temperatures and earlier sun. Down here, I wasn't getting any sun until about 11:30, but up here, I'm getting sun at 9:30 when it's still cool outside. And so by 11 o'clock, the panels have charged the batteries completely from the overnight usage of the freezer. So now I am able to run the well off the panels. On a sunny day like this, no big deal, this is easy. There's several things I have to do in order to do that though. I need to fill the tank every day because we only use about 10-15 gallons a day. Even with Carolyn's son here, that's all we're using. So if I fill it every day, I don't have to run the well very long. And the well, like I said, is using 800 watts. That's just about what these are producing. Even though I got 1,000 watts worth of solar panels, with all the micro cracks in it, I'm getting 700 to 800 watts. If I fill the tank fast enough, not only am I pulling amps from the solar panels, its maximum amount of wattage, I'm pulling energy from the batteries too. At the same time, the pump is pulling energy from both places, but there's enough time in the day at 11 o'clock for the solar panels to recharge the battery so I can get through the night. And we've been running his air conditioner about from noon, 1 o'clock until about 5 o'clock. So the solar panels are providing more than enough electric than what we've needed, which has never been the case since we've been here because they were down here in the weeds and I didn't want to mess with them. With Carolyn's son moving here, it forced me to do something I didn't want to do, move the solar panels. I didn't want to move them, but it forced me to do it. And as a result, this has been a huge gain. And it has really been a game changer around here. I haven't ran that generator for the well pump since I discovered this. What do they say? Necessity is the creature of invention. Well, I may not have invented this, but it did force me to do something with it. Well, now that I know I'm down 10 amps from the solar panels, I went ahead and ordered 2 more solar panels. They're 5 amps each, so that's going to give me 10 amps. It was $50 for the 2 of them. These are called Rich Solar, and you get them off Amazon. So they're supposed to be here next Tuesday, so that's a week and 1 day. It's 8 days from now. And I'm going to put them up here on the other end because the sun actually creeps up over here about 8:30, so that gives me another hour. And I'm going to make these where the wire is long enough that I can move them around throughout the day. So wherever the sun is, I watched a YouTuber one time say that it really doesn't matter where you position your solar panels. Well, even this morning, I saw that's not true. The sun was up over the trees. The sun travels from east to west. So right now we're at noontime, so the sun's directly above us. That way is south, so the solar panels are facing south. But this morning when it popped up over the trees, the solar panels had full sun, but I was only getting 26 out of possible 40 amps. I wasn't getting 40 amps until 11 o'clock. So that statement that you're not losing that much because they're not positioned correctly isn't true. I mean, that's almost a quarter of your energy being lost if I could have just pointed them that way. So I'm going to take these other two panels and get 10 amps first thing in the morning when that sun pops up over the trees. And then throughout the day, I can move them around, just the two of them. That won't be a chore at all. When we're in nomads, we saw people in RVs doing that. They just move them around all day long. And even if I don't move them around, it's not that big of a deal. This will give me, our charge controller, 60 amps. It'll give us 50 amps, I think, is what it's going to give us, which is what I originally bought these at. Now, later, after I do some more experimenting, I may go ahead and get 2 more solar panels. That would give us 20 total amps. That would max out the charge controller. Necessity is the mother of invention, or the creature of invention. It really is. I'm really happy that Carolyn's son forced me to move these. He didn't know he was. He didn't tell me to do it. Carolyn told me to do it, but that's not the reason we did it. It wasn't for power. It was just because she wanted to clean it up. I'm just rejuvenated. I'm just re-excited than I've ever been with the solar panels. So if you can click this up next box, take to a video where I was talking about backup water sources. So if I can get you excited on an old dream when you're living your dream. Thanks for watching.